Welcome everybody today to the special session of the future of Contingent. We're doing a special session today. The topic is internally managed programs. Our LinkedIn Live is generally focused on MSP's view of the market. However, there's a large percentage of internally managed programs in the marketplace. Today, we're going to discuss those trends and some differences with some of the best experts in the industry from the business of the buyers and also from consulting experts. 2024 has been an interesting year with a lot of starts and stops and volumes, changes in the business outlook, and of course, changes in leadership and government across the world, which affects economic policy and in general, the greater economy. In the past, we've discussed the concept of a rolling recession with the unemployment rate largely staying the same because of market forces, which include Fed rate changes, congressional spending, the reduction of immigration, the trends towards onshoring and nearshoring, as well as retirement rates outpacing new talent entering the workforce. All this makes it very difficult to reduce wage inflation, which is caused by basic supply and demand. Artificial intelligence has taken the world by storm. In the mainstream, with the advent of interfaces like ChatGPT, it's also given us a taste for the possible as well as the potential of reducing wage inflation through AI and automation. Speaking of that, we thought automation was going to replace lower wage. Sorry. Somebody put it on mute. Lower wage jobs, but now we're excited and somewhat worried that AI will be challenging the cognitive work class. Some analysts think it could affect about 25% of all jobs in the future. That doesn't mean that new jobs won't be created as a result. Now, let's talk about trajectory. We're in this faux session. Did the recession already happen? Are we at the edge of the recession? Today, we're going to be discussing how internally managed programs are navigating this environment, why internally managed programs make sense for some organizations, and challenges you need to be aware of when you're standing an internal program up. We have an amazing panel of guests today to talk about the workforce trends, but I want to mention something about inclusion. It's about community, expanding the talent pool, and celebrating successes of our community. So as I welcome these panelists, some of them have exciting news, and join me in celebrating them by liking the live session on LinkedIn and also putting some comments in there. So our panelists are Rubina Zito, Vice President of Technology and Operations Services at FINRA, but we have some news. You just got promoted to SVP, isn't that true?
It is. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thanks for blowing up my spot, Ash.
Absolutely. We got to celebrate it. Then we have Mickey Pelletier, founder and CEO of CWM Strategies, but he also has some exciting news along with Terry. So congratulations. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing next?
Yeah, myself, Terry, and Chris Payton recently formed a partnership, and we've started a technology called EmberPath. It's an AI-driven technology that we're really excited to share more about in the upcoming weeks here. So I'm not here to talk about that, but just a little teaser of something we're working on and really excited to share with everybody in the future here.
You got to give us a little bit more. Maybe Terry can shed some light on it. Terry Gallagher, President of Gallagher and Associates.
Thank you. Well, there's a couple of taglines, right, that we're using, but it's going to be illuminating new pathways to talent, and that's what we can share. It's something that we're really passionate about. We're going to be putting more out about it shortly. Product is under development, and working with Mickey and Chris Payton, they're geniuses on their own. So I'm thrilled to be building this with them.
Are you gonna make a rap video about it?
I'm gonna. Well, yeah, now I have to. We need more middle-aged Irish rappers.
Definitely. Nick Cleglanas, sorry if I mispronounced that. Vice President, Talent Acquisition, Flexible Workforce Program Leader at Broadridge. Welcome.
Hi.
Heather Snavely, Senior Director in Talent Acquisition at RXO.
Glad to be here.
And then Lisa Zach, former Director of CW at Medtronic.
Great to be here. Good to see y'all.
Great to have you. So we're roughly in the middle of the year for 2024. I definitely feel like the older I get, the faster time moves. But have you guys seen a stabilization in demand? And have you seen rates increase, decrease, stabilize? What are your thoughts on the second half of the year? Heather, you want to start?
Sure.
So for the second half of the year, we are planning for peak season, or looking at what will be peak season this year, how it might differ from last year. We have seen some stabilization in rates. From a program perspective, our program is very heavy on the light industrial front. So just for context for the folks on the call today. With that, we have seen some stabilization. We've been able to be mindful of the rates and how we're pushing forward. And I think that will continue for the second half of the year. We just implemented our program, so we're gathering a lot of data as we pull in suppliers and really monitor their performance and what the impacts are for rates.
Okay, interesting. And Joel, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say we've had the busiest year in our program history in 5 years that I've been here. So we've seen a lot of transactions in the first half of the year. I would say kind of status quo for the second half. I think with inflation and the cost of living, it's very important to make sure you're paying competitive rates. Similar to Heather, we're not necessarily light industrial, but do a lot of call center. So we need to make sure we're still competitive and bringing in the best quality.
Mm-hmm. Terry, your thoughts?
Well, I think there's definitely a lot of focus on cost control and looking at rates. And so naturally, I do think that more contingent workforce is going to be used. And that's going to be central to the way that a lot of folks are setting up internally managed programs and focusing on that. So this is a great time actually for our industry if we think strategically about it.
Yeah.
And the folks on this call are going to help us do that.
Definitely. And Mickey, what are you seeing?
I think it's interesting here, kind of going from industry to industry. Like Heather gives her point of view from the light industry, Joel, and the call center space. I think it's hearing mixed things. There's certain spaces like the HR space. A lot of companies have laid off lately, and there's a lot more HR talent available, recruiting talent than was. Back in 2021, you couldn't find a recruiter anywhere, and so rates were through the roof. So I think we're seeing a changing of rates depending on what industry you're in. So a little bit of a vague answer then, because it seems to vary across the board based on where demand is. And you're seeing more of that, I think, in the tech space outside of HR. It seems to be where I'm seeing it based on client interactions and partner interactions.
Yeah.
And Ash, if I could just add to that too, my response was around the same. I think during COVID, we all saw the rates hit the roof and not stop. We're starting to see that stabilization around what the right rates should be for the roles and the recs that we've got open. Although, based on the fact that we did go so high when we needed to pay for the talent that we needed to at that time, we're now internally for our work, our program, having a lot of trouble converting people in the right range of where they should be at the right level. So while the rates may have stabilized from a contingent workforce perspective, the downstream effects of what happened 4 years ago is something we're still dealing with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely hard to convert that way. Lisa, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think that was a cautionary tale. A year ago, we were struggling to find the labor. We were willing to pay for it. And when you look at your comp models for conversions, I'm not surprised, that we're in the situation we are now, where we're probably having to re-level or relook at the titles that we're going to be converting at.
Yeah, we're definitely coming off, I call the drug high of the early 2020s.
Yeah.
Nick, are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, so we're in the financial technology space, so we hire a lot of technology consultants. The majority of our roles are in the New York metropolitan area, so we're in a pretty competitive market. Typically what we do is we're paying what I'd say very competitive rates. Mm-hmm. Our program is we have transparency into what workers are getting paid, right? So we tend to try to keep the worker pay rates very competitive with the market to really kind of avoid big spikes up and down.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. Lisa, why do some clients choose internally managed programs? I wanted to start with you because I know that you had done that many years ago through Medtronic and sort of lifted and shifted a massive program.
Yeah. So we went internal in 2018, which we were one of the first really large programs to make that leap. There was a couple of reasons. I would say the biggest reason was we wanted to have a more strategic handle on our contingent workforce and the talent that we were bringing in, and really thinking about what that contributed to the larger workforce. So thinking about our conversion strategies, thinking about when the right time to convert is, and whether or not we should be using contingent workforce in those particular positions. So I think what we were seeing was, if we wanted to actually take it to the next level and go through that path of total talent management, we really felt we needed to have control over the technology, over the program, and have a better partnership with the stakeholders, HR, and the people that were needing the talent to make those decisions.
So is that allowing you to make decisions faster?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Faster decision making. Obviously, the cost savings were huge because we were part of a procurement organization, and eliminating the cost of the MSP and creating a buyer-funded model saved us significantly.
Interesting. And Rubina, did you guys have a MSP before? Did you start off internal?
No, we did not have an MSP. We had a conglomerate of many things that didn't work. So we decided very early on that we were going to take this on ourselves and not bring in an MSP. We were also a smaller program that we felt it was very manageable, whereas Lisa, maybe yours was a lot bigger than ours was at the time when we first started. So we just felt like it was manageable. I always jokingly say I'm a type A personality. I need to have control over it all. So I didn't want to give it up anyway. So we decided that we do it on our own. The one thing that I'll say is that when we talked with other internally managed programs when we were starting out, there was a lot of lessons learned that they gave us that we then were able to use those as speed bumps to make sure that we don't run into the same problems that they did. So a lot of that decision making was informed by many other internally managed clients that really helped us pave the way that we needed to do from the beginning.
Interesting. We'll come back to the lessons learned because I definitely want to go through that. Nick, what was your thought process on that? And did you ever consider going in that direction?
Sure. So we've always been in internally managed program. We don't even have a VMS for right now. We did recently go to market for one. We recently completed an RFP. So we've always been internally managed. We have spoken to MSP providers, but for us, the model works really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the benefits of the internal program is that no one's going to know your business as well as people that actually work for the company, right?
Yeah.
So we see that as a big difference here. We're also doing direct sourcing. I don't know if that's one of the topics on the list, so I'll kind of hold off on that. But for us, we've seen it work really well.
Okay, great. Terry, I know you've worked on both sides, and you have a really unique perspective on this. I'd love to hear what you think about this. You're on mute.
I was going to punt this to Heather too, because this kind of echoes the reason that she went and built an internally managed program. But the internally managed programs in general tend to be a bit more bullish on bringing in direct sourcing and statement of work and being able to be agile in meeting the business demands. So that's something that they're kind of taking into their own hands to get those things off the ground much quicker, and also driving strategic partnerships with the suppliers. And that's a really important piece of that. And I know, Heather, that's something you feel kind of passionately about when you built your internally managed program. Those are some of the themes I saw in your notes.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure of working on both sides as well, and managing program with MSP, and then building a couple of internally managed programs. And I really do think it depends on what the goals and the objectives of the program are. And for me at RXO, we had, we had outlined the goals and objectives. We had the executive sponsorship, and the expertise in-house, and I have a great team with Chandler Nunn as the program manager. So we were able to stand it up, but it gives, same pluses, the control, the ability to develop very positive and strategic partnerships, and then also just pivot quickly with the business. We can move things and get the support really quickly, or have been successful doing so. So,
Heather, was it easier to do that or get headcount for that, or is it easier to? Because sometimes like companies won't let you get headcount for their role, which is one of the reasons why they go to an MSP provider. Was that a challenge?
It boils down to how strong your business case is and the value that you're going to be able to demonstrate on ROI for the program.
Mm-hmm.
So I've not led a program team internally where I have had a lot of staff. So we have to work very efficiently and lean. But for me, it wasn't difficult. But we also, there was also the work done on the front end to make sure the business case was strong as to why we're going to bring it in-house, and then how we're going to evolve it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a journey. These spaces are journeys, and stand it up, move it forward, but what the continued ROI would be. So
yeah, interesting.
Yep.
Jill, what are your thoughts around that? Jill?
One thing I'll add that Heather did that was
I would say we started as an MSP, and
go ahead. You're the.
I was going to say we started as an MSP. We were on as an MSP run, and then we transitioned to an internal program about 2.5 years ago. What I will say, I'll echo what most people said, but I think contingent workforce programs have become more strategic to an organization. So I think whereas it used to be transactional, make sure you can get things through in an automated way, it's gone to talent has gotten more complex, and you want to make sure you have that total talent management for direct sourcing. And it's not just a VMS. It's not just an MSP. You're taking 5 or 6 different talent sources and trying to mold them all together. So for us, I think that's important to have that aligned with the entire business.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And Terry, you're going to add
I was going to add, when we worked with ARCSO on their program, they also had their program manager involved from day one, which was critical. So he was able to be involved in the requirements and gathering that and building and shaping the program so that when we went live, it was a much shorter stabilization process. He already had high adoption, et cetera. So I think that was a little bit of their secret sauce. And they're running a program with basically 1.5 people, and it's going really, really well. And I know that the rest of the team has echoed that too, the leaner ops models, if you structure them properly.
Okay, interesting. Mickey, I'm going to throw you a question that's a little bit different that we didn't really prep for, but have you seen models where they have maybe an internally managed program in one market and then an MSP in another market because they don't have a huge footprint or something like that?
Oh yeah. No, different clients have that. There was one I'd worked with a few years back that they actually had 5 separate programs already stood up. 2 of them were run by an MSP. 2 of them were run by 2 different internally managed team, and then one was this amalgamation of hybrid support between one of their MSPs and an internal resource. It was really messy, really sticky. They made it work. Now, is that the way to go? It was the state of where they were at, and they were making it work for them. And there obviously were opportunities towards centralization and standardization of processes and rhythms and the way that things work. So is it possible? Yeah. I mean, you have to find what works for you, and perhaps it is better to have them segmented differently. And there are opportunities where clients and folks I've spoken with have moved away, and they did have MSP in one quarter, and then they said, you know what, we're going to bring that in-house. There's opportunities to shift it the other direction depending on what it is you really need and what the priorities are. I think to Heather's point earlier, you had asked Ashish about getting the funding, right? And how can your business prioritize that? And so being able to run it in a lean fashion, build that business case, it may lead to your favor of getting that internally managed program. But if the priorities are different based on your leadership structure and what they need, you may not be able to get exactly what you want, which could lead to this hybrid dual approach for various entities within your business.
Yeah, No, absolutely. Lisa, you didn't just turn on every market at once, right? Because I know you're going across the globe. Did you do it in phases and
Yeah,
a
yeah.
hybrid
No,
model?
we lift and shifted, our current state program, which was run by an MSP. And so we were able to do, I think it was a $400 million program all at once, and then chip away at countries and bring in more countries through that global expansion and statement of work and direct sourcing all wrapped into that. So, looking at your resource models is so critical because if you understaff these programs, it can be, the kiss of death. So we were really, really looking at what do we need to stabilize the current state, and then also thinking about as we get bigger and grab more markets, what kind of headcount are we going to need so we can budget and put that in our rolling AOP.
Interesting. Terry, in the overall market, what percentage of programs are MSP versus internally managed currently? Or Mickey or Terry, do you guys have that stat?
Yeah, I think Terry was frozen up there for a minute. I think some of the stats that SIA had stated that were either at or approaching 60% of all contingent workforce programs are internally managed at this point. And they seem to point to that growing in the future. Obviously, that's based on various points of data and surveys. So, you could always take it all with a grain of salt, but I think it is certainly a growing trend that we may see as one theme we've heard consistently across everybody here is control. Take that control for yourself and enable yourself to make those key strategic decisions. Not that you can't allow or rely on a partner to do that for you, but certainly that ability to do that and bring that in-house, assuming your leadership enables and allows you to do that, can certainly change the foundation of how you really conceptualize contingent workforce management for your organization. So a long-winded answer there, but I think it's growing, and I think that was the number as I understood it.
Oh, wow. And because I know that it's not a one size fits all, right? Some places it makes sense to have an MSP, some places it makes sense to have an internally managed program. Are you also seeing a trend around, because Gen 1 could be really complicated, we'll go into that in a minute, but are you seeing some companies looking at sort of build, operate, transfer, so they start off with an MSP and then they move it in with the long-term plan of taking it in-house so they can get some of the heavy lifting done early with an outsourcing provider?
Yeah, they certainly can see that as an opportunity to get something in the door and get something stood up in a way that, all right, let us outsource it to them, and then we can decide whether or not we want to build that or take that in ourselves. That's certainly one strategy. I think it depends really on the scope of services that you're looking to bring into the fold of your contingent workforce program, the maturity of your organization, the size. There's a fair amount of considerations there that I think one canned answer wouldn't necessarily answer, and it's going to be very specific to each client at the time and where they are, and certainly requires some very thoughtful analysis to make that decision to lead them to what's going to be best for them.
I want to provide a slightly different perspective on this, and I apologize if I have internet issues. It's obviously me just scrolling, but I think a lot of MSPs are seeing this as an or, and it's really an and. There's really an opportunity here to help these customers implement and design these programs and get them stood up. And the program itself is not an internally managed MSP. It's really a very different playbook that is about implementing more advanced talent supply strategy and having VMSs that are much more configurable and hands-on, and having strong admin access, and being able to pivot quickly to meet business demands and have a collaborative supplier relationship versus command and control. And I think that they are leading the charge in changing this model. And there's a lot of opportunity in the market. Mickey and I have both experienced supporting them, but I think that the MSPs, in our opinion, have a huge opportunity that they're missing to really kind of go in and jump in and build these hybrid programs as Mickey's talking about, or all the different things on the menu with just a few small tweaks. And I know there's some MSPs on the call, and that's our call to action, because we would love people to come and collaborate with us and help us, build these programs together. But there's a lot of opportunity to help these customers get these off the ground, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
To your point, Terry, I think there's, for an internally managed program, you may budget for things that come up or changes that happen, but there's always a need for data or
Exactly.
some, ad hoc services keep up with the expertise of what we've come to know over our time in contingent workforce. So I would agree with you, and I've brought that point up to several MSPs that they need to go from just selling the full solution to more of an ad hoc approach for an internally managed program.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So there's even providers out there that provide just very specialized services within that spectrum of services that are offered for the end-to-end that can be leveraged as well. And we're starting to see more of those pop out, from supplier management to rate card rationalization to, obviously consultants that can come in to do these small little portions of that greater spectrum of the end-to-end life cycle. So yeah, I think that's a really great point. Sorry to hop in there, but I think that's really
I love this.
all out.
Yeah, Nikki and I have both been tapped on the shoulder, to be frank, from MSPs, like, all right, what are you guys doing over there? We were like, come and join us, like lots of room, you know what I mean? So I think, and as Joel said, like there's opportunity here.
And I love, Terry, how you described it. It's not an or, it's an and.
Yeah, it's an and everybody's so busy treating it as an or, and it's profitable. They can monetize it. There's lots of things, like Joel said, that components that can add. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now we're going to go to the fun part. Rabina, lessons learned, things you heard from before you still went up.
She's like,
I think we started to hear it already. Lisa talked about making sure you're staffed appropriately. I think that was one of our biggest lessons learned, or at least pieces of advice that we received very early on. Make sure that you don't start off thinking that you can do this as a one-person team. We started as a 1.5 person team. So at least we didn't start with the one that we thought we needed. But it really, I think staffing was a critical piece of our success. I think over communication was another one. We really, from the very beginning, our program is also very unique at FINRA because the way this came about is I sit in technology. I report to our chief of staff, I report to our CIO as his chief of staff. And our program really was born out of a need to understand where are we spending our money on contingent work. And we didn't have a program. We didn't have a VMS. We didn't have really a central point of contact. It was kind of onesie twosies all over the board. So it came out, our program was born out of necessity just to be able to find the information that we needed. So our program sits in technology, does not sit with HR, does not sit with procurement. So it was very unique to begin with. So we had to make sure that we had all of the buy-in from every single stakeholder, whether it was procurement, HR, our finance team, our technology team, obviously, from the very beginning, whereas you don't necessarily have to do that if your program doesn't sit in a random unit. We also had the lever. We were able to leverage the fact that we were a technology organization, so our implementation of our VMS was a lot more efficient than we had ever anticipated because it sat with us. We understood it. We wrote the requirements essentially in my team. We have Fieldglass as our VMS right now, and we're moving off of it over the next couple of months because we have been on it now for majority of our program being live, which has been about 9 years. So I think those were the lessons learned: being staffed, over communication, and then really paying close attention to our technology implementation of the VMS if and when you choose to have one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Those are great points. Lisa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the staffing, as we both mentioned, but I mean, we were looking when we did that, and we modeled that as part of our business case because obviously we were part of procurement. Procurement is not typically known to run these kind of programs, right? I think that was our biggest obstacle, was just getting our own organization around the idea that we would be managing this internally versus outsourcing it, which is the comfort zone for procurement. So I think that was it. I mean, we looked at the MSP, they had 33 dedicated people for our program, and we brought that down, I think, to 21 when we brought it inside. So we did see some efficiencies there. I think it was really critical because I had come from the MSP and ran this program, that to have somebody that understands the operations, not just from the business side, but also how do you run a program. And I would say that if you're looking at this, really challenge your VMS partners in ways that they may feel uncomfortable about, but it will ultimately make the product that much better. And so when we went through multiple I think we've done 3 field glass implementations, and most recently we did the Vinley implementation. And it's really about where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years. And if you are going for this, document that strategy. Make sure that you're constantly communicating that North Star of where you want to take this program to generate that excitement and to get your partners on board.
Absolutely. The other question I'm going to ask all you guys is, so Rubina sits in IT, Lisa's sat in procurement. Where is it sitting for the rest of you, the programs?
For me, it's sitting in talent acquisition under HR.
Okay.
Same here.
Yeah. Yep. Same here.
So interesting. So is there a best practice around that, or does it just matter about the leadership who's managing it?
I think it's a matter of where's the expertise in the organization. I don't know that it matters who owns it. I think it's important to have the right stakeholders at the table and alignment across those. So I couldn't do this without our procurement organization, without technology to go alongside. So legal, compliance, you have to have all those pieces working. So if I'm just running it from talent acquisition, we're doing our own thing, it's not going to be successful either. So I think it's just key to understand what's the culture and who has that expertise that could run it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I if I could just chime in, I would completely agree. I think we run it under talent acquisition. We have the expertise in TA. We also rely, to Joel's point, we rely heavily on all the other functional areas, the buy-in, to make sure we can get the adoption that we need, and honestly, just to get the work done that we need to effectively run the program. So, for us, it boils down to, and we have, as I mentioned, we just implemented Simplify VMS this year. We were completely manual before, so it's right out of the gate, first go around to build the framework. But I agree. I don't think it matters where it sits. It's just, do you have the expertise that you need aligned to what you want to get done according to what the business objectives and the goals are for the program?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Heather, one thing I want to add to, you and Lisa have this in common, is pushing the VMS, because I know you went through the same thing to evolve the system, because you're going to be more hands-on with it. And so you had the requirements gathering that you did push them further because of that, right? And being so close to the tech and really using all their bells and whistles.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. Really aligning it. I have the privilege of leading all of talent acquisition. So for me, it's a talent program. We should be measuring and ensuring that we're building out the requirements. So that's another area to think about as lessons learned, or just as you're considering an internally managed program, expertise to understand. And I think Lisa mentioned this, the requirements from not only a program management perspective, but the requirements for your technology to make sure it's facilitating the process that you want, and putting things quickly on that enhancement list that you don't have. So I'll just say that.
Absolutely. And so Nick, I'm going to ask you a question, because you mentioned in the beginning you didn't have a VMS. So how did you manage this without a VMS? And number two is, I know you're looking at a VMS now. So do you feel it's critical to take it to the next level?
So today we use Workday as our ATS for full-time staffing, and we also use it for the hiring of consultants. Obviously, it's not a VMS; it's not optimized for that, but we make it work, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we do it today. And yes, I mean, for us, the VMS is all about efficiencies, better user experience for our hiring managers, better analytics, better reporting for us. Our thinking is it'll first start out in North America, and then we'll expand it outside the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
We would start with staffing and then bring in SOW. So for us, it's about really being able to look at our overall spend and how we're using non-associate labor. I'll call it, really, to get that holistic view across the whole company.
Absolutely. Terry, I know you're very progressive on technology. Do you think a VMS is critical for these programs? And then if they are, what do you think the providers need to do to sort of take it to the next level?
Oh, I have a strong opinion on it. Thank you. They are absolutely critical because the automation is critical to getting all of the ROI, the cost savings and the visibility and the metrics. So yes, absolutely. I do think that some of the bigger players need to change their playbook a little bit around configurability and ease of use for the end user, because there's not going to be a middle person. So and we found internally managed clients tend to be far more progressive around the leverage of tech, and they want to use more, they want to push it harder, as Lisa and Heather both said. So I think being able to accommodate that, and when they have a request, it doesn't go into a Jira ticketing system or it goes somewhere on the roadmap, that you give them a technology that can flex with them and move as quickly as they want to move, and provide really deep training. One thing Simplify VMS did really, really well is they provided deep training to Heather's team to make sure that they really knew how to use everything, and continue to support them through that process.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on it.
I think it's critical just to have the real-time data and the automation to other systems. There's so many integrations and APIs now to other technologies that you really want to have for your contingent workforce as well. So I think one takeaway is I would love to push more of the VMS providers to be more progressive. I'm not seeing us moving fast enough as an industry to take on AI and to take on other items such as that. So, for my program, I know we'd love to have more chatbot functionality, more automation of, just checking resumes. You can already source with that as a TA group, but I think we're a little bit behind in the contingent workforce side.
Yeah, and one of the things I've thought of as an idea from 2010, I think, was if you're going to maintain a vendor neutral program, then it'd be great if you released a rec and you said, okay, well, this manager last time hired somebody from this sort of profile and it's a similar job. And so these are the things that are important to him or her. And I think that would be a way to sort of maintain the vendor neutral, but still give recruiters more insight into not just the job itself, but the manager who's trying to fill that job. And the second thing that I was thinking about was if you have a tenure limit, for example, and let's say it's 2 years, and the project's only 1 year long, like a month before the project starts to expire, have the VMS send an email to the manager and say, are you going to extend this person? Yes or no? They say no. Is he eligible for rehire? Yes. Okay. Then you take that candidate and market to them from the VMS the jobs that are open while they're on site, because then you can retain them and you get cost savings, and then go back to the staffing provider and say, since we extended them through this project and placed them for you, give us a discount and you get overall cost savings plus retention. So, I mean, are there any progressive ideas that you guys have implemented using a VMS that the audience would love to hear about?
Well, I think, Nick, you had mentioned like a services layer that yours had added, correct? That was kind of their secret sauce. I remember in our conversation.
You're talking about the
VMS.
Right. Yeah. So we recently completed a VMS RFP, and I think a lot of the VMSs, frankly, need to do a better job when it comes to direct sourcing tools. The majority of the ones that we looked at really, they really didn't have much to offer as far as direct sourcing. There's really only one or two of them that had what we would consider a viable direct sourcing solution. So I think that's really important. I think that's where the industry is going. Frankly, I only see more companies moving towards direct sourcing.
Interesting. So with direct sourcing, and let's talk about AI a little bit. Have you guys implemented AI? And also, what are you looking for from your vendors on the AI side, both from the VMS and the staffing providers?
I can start. We've used AI for a couple of years in terms of assessments. We've used Glider AI for the last couple of years. We've seen some really great value in using these kinds of assessment tools to be able to decrease our time to market with some of these candidates, as well as the quality that we are pushing through to our managers for the candidates. So I highly recommend something like that. Of course, it takes a lot of time and effort to set it up front. So you've got to be able to put in that investment. But once it's there, I think it could really bring a ton of value. And the other option that we aren't using yet, but we would love to, from an AI perspective, is the new VMS that we'll be going to has options where you can use their generative AI functions and features that allow you to see predictive analytics around what types of roles you hire for, where you hire them from, how much you pay, as well as a full circle of life on how long these people last in your company, and at what point should you start thinking about a backfill based on those kind of AI type resources that are built into the platform. So I'm really excited about that stuff because we've talked about data for a long time in these forums, internally to our own program, and how can we continue to elevate our, not only just, our program and the value that we bring, but also really how do you make this a total talent program? How do you look at this for the future of contingent work and be prepared for that? And I think having these conversations now and hopefully being able to test this out fairly quickly and make it part of our everyday DNA of how our program is managed is a really exciting moment for me.
I love those ideas. Lisa, you also started doing stuff with sort of data analytics and AI pretty early. I remember you showing me a tool where it showed you when it makes sense to convert somebody versus keep them as a temp.
Yeah, we did. But we built that ourselves because there wasn't anything on the market that would consume our compensation models and our external workforce models. So we had to basically take our Workday data and our contingent data and put them together in a we use Power BI and Snowflake on the back end, but basically we built it ourselves so that we could have executive dashboards and model out the date of conversion and what the lost opportunity cost is the longer you keep that resource in a contingent function versus converting. And so that was a really rich idea at the time. And I think it really was that culmination of why we went internal was so that we could produce that kind of modeling, and that we could really push our hiring managers and leaders and give them hard data, people's names, suppliers, markups. We could track those, everything. It was kind of the whole, reason why we brought it in-house in the first place. But, since then, we implemented Vinly, and those are some of the conversations that we've had over the years with the Workday and Vinly people is we had to build this ourselves. So what does the tech stack look like when we've invested in Workday, in Vinly, and where is it going to go? And are you going to be able to produce the same kind of modeling organically within your tools?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And Heather?
Yeah, we aren't using currently, but there is absolutely we want to and will be. For me, back to I agree on the predictive analytics and really helping to drive business strategy and understanding the full talent landscape. So I think one of the things, and I actually just had a conversation about this yesterday, is how much are we building outside of the VMS versus in the VMS, and what are we doing to get things on the roadmap in partnership with our VMS supplier to be able to move the dial there. So, having a VMS, investing in it, and then building a lot outside of the tool, how do we bridge that gap and move that forward?
Are any of you guys asking the staffing providers to provide like predictive analytics on market rates and trends and
yes, we absolutely do.
Oh, great. And Jill?
Well, for AI, I would say we haven't implemented anything yet. That's something that we are pushing. The amount of clicks it takes in the program to go from candidate submitted to onboarded is too much right now. So I think that's where, from a program team perspective, I would like to get out of the transactional and get more into the strategic. And we all want to use our brains in the right way. So I think that's where we're really headed, is trying to reduce those clicks, provide more automation. And I agree with the predictive analytics as well.
Interesting. Mickey, what are your thoughts?
AI is such a loaded topic because half the times we don't even really know what we're all talking about, and we're all not saying the same thing. We're all kind of waiting to see what everybody else is doing, and I think that's why we're talking about it, right? Because it's a new space we're all trying to figure out. I mean, I think there's an immense amount of opportunity, and it's just interesting. Ashish, some of the I must have made a comment when you first started talking about it. Was thinking, oh, somebody should just build a technology that does a lot of that. Hence what Terry and I are starting to work on, and we think about there.
Yeah.
I think, and we talk about this a lot via comments on LinkedIn, but just the thought today of, what are the actual problems, and can they be solved with AI, or are we just adding to the problem by trying to implement an AI solution that doesn't completely meet the needs and just adds another layer of complexity to it without actually solving, the problem or the task at hand? So I think we have to be quite considerate around how we're using it, and is it enabling a true solution to the problem, or are we just throwing AI at it as a way of thinking it's solving, but not really doing a whole lot? It's certainly exciting. I see so much opportunity for it. We just need to be very crisp on what is it doing, how is it solving, and is it just cannibalizing itself? There's been many articles circulating lately around the use of generative AI, and if it just keeps on putting out the same generic nonsense, and it keeps learning that, it's not actually advancing anything. So if you're able to use it in a way that it's consuming your data in a way that helps you to figure out the future and provide those predictive analytics and continue to do that in a very progressive way, man, it's fascinating, and the possibilities are absolutely endless. And I think we are living in a very cool time when it comes to this, particularly being at the forefront of seeing the evolving nature of AI. In the capacity that we're beginning to see it. So there's just so much to learn and see, and it's sometimes hard to put words to it because it's not always an easy thing to describe.
Well, and I think, Gallagher and CWM is going deep on this for a few reasons for our product and just the potential and the opportunities. But I think Joel and Lisa really hit on it. It's the ability to aggregate that data and to provide outputs in a very intelligent, expedited way. Like, what is the next step to take, or what is the best path to take, things that human brains can't process as quickly. But I see people, solution providers and staffing, everyone's sprinkling AI and everything like sugar, and I think a lot of it is you really have to have a deep understanding of its capabilities and where it can add strength and then where you need the humans, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you, Terry, because I think what you guys all said makes sense, and what you're doing is very thoughtful because you're using AI to solve sort of operational issues and back-end systems. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you personally, with my company, we're using it to do like matching on finance and matching on timesheets and all the back-end things that we could do better, and even sort of sourcing. But I've told them to stop using it to write emails to me because things that you see.
Where's the warmth, the love? You don't feel it anymore, right?
Well, you're getting like the things that take 2 sentences are now like soliloquies, and I'm like, I'm not going to answer all this.
And they're kind of cold, it's missing your tone and your personality.
Exactly. One of the other topics I wanted to go into is, so we've seen a lot around DEI this year, and I still think you can't. I've been saying for about a year and a half, you can't fix the D and the E unless you get the I right and the inclusion piece of it. How does internally managed programs make it easier to sort of implement a good DEI program? And I know, Rubina, you've done some amazing stuff within your organization, both on a total talent management side of it and also just from a inclusion and DEI effort for your temp labor candidates. Can you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a passion of mine. So I've made sure that we at FINRA celebrate the diversity that we have and are committed to making sure that inclusion is part of every conversation. So we obviously have, we ensure our partners operate in the same capacity. These are our tier 1 and tier 2 vendors. We want to make sure they have the same values. That's always been very important for us. But when we start talking about inclusion, it's not just a metric, and I think that's where a lot of people get lost sometimes, where we look for how can we show that we're doing the right thing? How can you show me evidence in terms of metrics? And I don't think it's about metrics at all. I think it's about making it part of your DNA. So we've done a few things that I feel like has really changed the face of how we approach D&I. Things like making sure that as part of our interview panels, where we have people that have the right representation across the board. Research shows, and don't quote me on it, but research shows that if you have a woman on the panel, you're 60% more likely to end up with a finalist that's a woman than you would be otherwise. Things like that, I think, really hit home for us, and we changed our practices to make sure that there is representation across the board on these panels that we have from an interview perspective. That's one thing. The second thing that I think we've just done very organically is be more mindful of where we're recruiting from, where we're asking our vendors to recruit from. So this is a total talent conversation. What are the areas that we want to be able to make sure that we have representation across the board, and we're casting the net far and wide so that we are allowing for that population and that pool to actually be a diverse pool. So, I'm not about like we have to have X number of, represented minorities or anything like that. And we're not that kind of program. This is something that is just true to who we are. We want to make sure that we've got diversity of leadership, of thought, of all ages, all representation. And the best way to do that is to make sure that our partners understand that this is a priority for us. And we've honestly seen the shift. I can't tell you it's increased by 10% or anything like that, but we've seen the shift in just the population that we have in the organization. We've seen a shift in how people approach DEI and engage with us from an interview perspective, as well as from a candidate perspective, and the feedback loop that we've been receiving. So that was a lot, but that's kind of the stuff that we've been
doing. I love it. So one of the things I think was super unique there is that it's not just about having a diverse panel of candidates, actually having a diverse panel of people in the decision-making process, right? Yeah. To get there.
One thing I want to add here too is I think internally managed programs have closer relationships with the supplier community just organically, right? It's a much more collaborative relationship. And so to Rubinia's point, you're able to really drive some of those diverse candidates into your program because you have that kind of relationship, and that it is about how are you marketing to and how are you making sure that you are touching those communities. And I think that that's a little bit of the secret sauce as well from what we've seen.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to add to that?
I will say, being internally managed, we were able to have a little bit closer connection with our legal to make the decision to say, hey, we can start tracking this in our Workday system. Right after we transitioned, we started tracking this immediately. So the numbers aren't, to Rubina's point, I think they don't tell the whole story, but I think they can tell a part of the story to say, do you have an issue here? Do you need to make any changes in the program? So that is one thing that being an internal program, we are able to launch that through their onboarding process where they get a questionnaire and they can voluntarily fill that out, and we can take that data and understand, are there changes that we need to implement?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so for us, we also track that information in Workday, and we're doing many of the things that Rubina is doing as well. And we also do have our staffing firms report on it during their QBRs. So we've been tracking that for some time. And, again, we convert a lot of our consultants to full-timers. And, for us, it's really been a great source of diverse talent.
Very cool. And to add to that, so you guys were talking about how DI affects it, but also are your programs internally managed? Are they vendor neutral, or are they a hybrid model, or are they completely manager contact?
Ours is a hybrid, I would say. You start out as vendor neutral to try to control. We had 125 suppliers that we went and consolidated down to 25. So we started a little more vendor neutral. We've kind of loosened that in most of our business now, and we want managers or suppliers to understand what our managers' needs are and build that relationship. In other areas like call center, we don't have a vendor neutral. It's very high touch from a supplier. We want them to be integrated with our business.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment. We are vendor neutral also, but to the point just made, we're corralling the suppliers, understanding the performance, and then we'll determine what the business requirements are moving forward. So out of the gate, it was let's learn, let's give equal opportunity, and then determine, based upon scorecarding and quality, all those components, how we move forward.
Absolutely. And Lisa?
Yeah, we were vendor neutral, but I think it's important as a self-managed program to recognize when there's opportunities to, move away from that. There are aspects of our business, heavily manufacturing, where we went with sole supplier, vendor on-prem models, not just in manufacturing, but also in specific, like our PMO offices. And so we would, follow the same RFP process to select that sole provider. But then, of course, with that relationship, and that partnership, there's an expectation that the suppliers are going to be giving direct contact with the managers and providing more solutions directly to the hiring managers.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like everyone's doing hybrid. Rabina, so far.
We're a full touch program with our suppliers. We've always seen that this is something that works for our managers. They want that kind of interaction. So it's been that way for a while. We kind of in the beginning tried a vendor neutral possibility, but like I said, we started off in a very weird, unique situation, and we wanted it to be able to be an interactive program for all of our vendors and our managers alike.
Interesting. And Nick?
Yeah, so we are vendor neutral, but there's a fair amount of interaction that does occur between the suppliers and the managers, right? So, our process is we send the requirement out to suppliers, the resumes come in, the managers select who they want to interview, and then at that point, there's typically interaction between the managers and the suppliers. So again, a hybrid model.
Very cool. So we're getting close to time. I wanted to make sure we ended this with last thoughts. And so, Terry, I'd love to hear one, if you think there's a best practice around this for internally managed programs, vendor neutral, not vendor neutral. And then I know you had some comments you wanted to make towards the end, so I'd love to hear that. And then after
I think the team's already said it, but obviously the stats are 60% of organizations either already have or will have an internally managed program. So there's really a big opportunity here. I think the way that they're being designed, these customers are our experience has been they're very progressive. They really want to maximize the tech. They want to bring in direct sourcing and SOW very quickly. They have very strong approaches on the E&I. So I believe the playbook is changing, right? It's not an internally managed MSP. It's really a very different solution, but there's still help that's needed at the beginning with implementation and setting up the operations model and making sure that they're stable. So this is a trend that's not going to go away. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity here. But that's been our experience is these customers on the call today. You really have to bring your A game, and you have to be really up on trends and talent supply strategy and data. There's lots of opportunity in the market. So that's it. That's my speech.
Great. And for all the rest of you guys, what are you most optimistic about the future of contingent workforce? We'll end it there.
I'll jump in. I think I'm most optimistic that technology is making it easier for candidates to find jobs and for programs to connect those candidates to jobs. I think it's, the transparency is hopefully getting better, and we just need to kind of get out of the way to make sure that there is that transparency, and you go from thinking you might be a candidate for 1,000 jobs and letting AI play out and say, you're actually the best fit for these 10 jobs. So that's what I'm most excited about, is using that technology to become smarter.
Definitely. Heather?
I would say I'm extremely optimistic and very excited about this space and the opportunity to add value to organizations. You know, leveraging the technology, establishing the really strong supplier partnerships, looking at other, you know, direct sourcing and other avenues to really drive a talent program and how we can impact the business and just keep up with the way of the world and the way of the worker and what they want and the types of you know, positions they like. That excites me, and I'm, you know, every year we should be evolving. Every year we should be changing. We shouldn't look the same, you know, 6 months from now. So,
Yep, absolutely. Ravina?
Just to add to what Heather said, every year we should be evolving. I totally agree. And the only way you can do that is if you remain flexible and adaptable. So I think that's an important piece where, again, that going back to that lessons learned, we weren't super flexible or adaptable when we first launched our program. And I think we had to be. So I'm just really optimistic to see what's going to be coming down the pipeline, like Joel mentioned, in terms of AI, how we can use it, how we could get smarter, more efficient, and allow us to evolve and change and make our program better as we grow.
Yep. So it's never a boring moment in the people business.
No, it's not.
Mickey?
Evolution has been used a few times already. I don't know. I think omni-channel talent strategy, being able to leverage multiple channels for sourcing your talent and recognizing that it's more than just staff aug, it's more than just services procurement, the growing use of independent contractors and freelancers and talent strategies that are going on through that, and direct sourcing, I think, are the next wave that companies are going to look to as they right-size their current operations with their staff aug and SOW services. So I think there's a big evolution that's going to happen there. We've been talking about it for a while. We're on this cusp, but I think with the momentum that the industry is gathering, we're going to see a greater push for that as we expand and evolve our programs. Thanks for having us, though. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely, definitely. Nick?
Sure. I mean, look, I think everything has been said, but I'll focus on adding value. And I think when you talk about adding value, that can be in different ways, right? It can be in cost savings. It can be in delivering better outcomes. It can be in faster onboarding. I think, you know, one of the real opportunities is, you know, sourcing talent globally now, right? I mean, that's frankly much easier to do than it's ever been. So I think that's a really big opportunity. I know for us, again, being a tech firm, right, there's, you know, I think there's maybe more opportunity to kind of leverage global resources when you're a tech heavy firm. But yeah, I mean, for us, I think that's what it is. And again, just adding value in lots of different ways to do that.
Love that. And Lisa, you want to end it?
You know, I think it's all been said, all of the above, right? I'm really, really excited where technology is going. And I can't say this enough, because the insights that are going to be produced going forward with the harmonization of multiple tech stacks is just, that really gets me excited. So
very cool.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for joining. That was so insightful. And I think there's a lot of things nuggets of wisdom that we can all use to sort of think about the future.
One thing I want to add too, we learned a couple of things. I don't know about Mickey. We've been doing this for a while. And so I want to thank the panel. There's a few notes. I was like, I didn't know that. And I wrote it down. So thank you.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
Bye.
All right.